Okay, well, there we have it. There's the intro. My wow, my frames per second seems like it's super low. Are you seeing that too?
Well, I can't actually see you because I'm still getting that thing where every screen apart from my screen is just total like pixel scramble.
Crazy.
So I couldn't
Maybe
tell
I'll
you
have
what
to.
the FPS is. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna just have to ask right quick and see if for because on my screen, well, you can hear me fine, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as long as you can hear me, um, it looks like I literally have like 12 frames per second here. It's never a dull moment trying to get a stream to work. Uh, I think it's because I enabled local recording, so I'd have a backup. I regret that now. Maybe I can turn it off. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Well, I guess I can't turn it off. So what I'm going to do, folks, I'm going to. You know more about this than I do, Zulu. Is it unwise to end the stream and restart it? Would that be a bad idea?
Um, I mean, I think there's only one viewer at the moment. I think it shouldn't be too bad.
Okay, I'll do that and then I'll put out an announcement. Ooh, 1 second. Oh, there's somebody asking how to call in. I know the answer to this question.
It looks fine on the stream. Like your webcam looks fine on the stream
Okay,
itself.
so when you're watching the stream on your end, you don't see like a really bad frames per second situation?
No.
Oh, then we're good. Let's just go like that then. Okay, so all of our technical problems are apparently completely in my mind, so we're good to continue. I'm going to just put out an announcement to everybody, and then we can start. And I've got a caller we're going to bring in right away, but I'm going to be so distracted by I'm going to have to just not look at my studio monitor here because it's so weird seeing myself in slow motion. But I do have some good questions for us in between calls too, so we'll see how that goes. I'm just going to put out an announcement right quick. And we should be good to go. Any interesting Liberty news this week, Zulu, besides maybe a very exciting announcement on your part about an upcoming debate? Maybe?
Yeah, I mean that's the only thing I've really got. I mean, there might be something interesting going on in the world of libertarian news, but I think the last main thing was Hans Hoppe getting excommunicated, and I think we've probably already gone over that, or we might not have. I don't remember.
I know that it got pretty extensive treatment on the Remnant podcast.
Yes. Yes. So anyway, the good news for me is that I was able to rope Infrared, aka Has Aldine, very foreign name, into a debate with me. All his fans were immediately because Jake Shields was going on Twitter going like, "Oh no, it's so difficult to find any capitalists to debate this guy. Nobody will debate this guy." And like multiple times, both me and Praxpam were like, "Okay, well, we'll do it." I pick one. Either one works. And just completely getting pied. So then I decided to do a little bit of, mimetic warfare, as it were, and managed to piss him off enough, clearly, that he wanted to posture to his fan base, and I managed to rope him into a debate. At first, he was very adamant that no, I've got to call into his fucking TikTok show, which 0% chance I'm doing that. No, thank you. I know how that goes. But he was guys like these. They really do like posturing quite a lot. So if you just, it can't hurt to ask. Just say, no, I want to debate you in particular. Are you too cowardly to do that? He's like, okay, I'll debate you in particular. And he suggests like 3 a.m. for me, and I was like, no, that's not going to work. And he was able to knock it back. That's the lesson for you guys out there. Doesn't matter if they're like way bigger or anything like that. It can't hurt to just say no. That's not going to work. Either if you don't want to do it, then you don't want to do it. Just say that. But that time isn't going to work for me. So that's going to happen on Sunday the something of April. It is on Sunday the 19th of / Monday the 20th, depending on your time zone.
Very exciting. I think that his debate with Praxben a year ago was an important event for the SneckTube community, if we can refer to it that, the online influencers here. I'm going to go ahead and just jump into, because we're just getting our first caller into the stream. Oh, there they are now. So I'm going to just move them over, and we can get started. Okay. Mr. Dylan, you're on the air. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I sure can. All right, you're on the air. So the call screener says you got a question for us about the topic of sufficient evidence and property rights. So why don't you tell us what the question is in your own words, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I was actually having a little text conversation with you a couple of weeks ago about your ability to change your mind if presented with evidence that would be contrary to your beliefs. And you said that you would be open-minded to that. And I questioned that by saying, oh, so you were born an Ancap, right? And you didn't really get back to me, because I suspect that pretty much everyone who becomes an Ancap was at one time a statist, and a hardcore statist. And it took a long time to have the evidence presented to them in order to change their minds. Would you say that's the same for you?
Yeah, if we're talking about me personally, I was definitely a statist for a long time. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, I didn't have a chance of even knowing there was an alternative. When I was a teenager, and I think it's been long enough now that that's I can excuse myself, but I went through interest in all kinds of different political philosophies, which would be like fascism, communism. I was interested in all this stuff. Mostly I was interested in history, so whatever I was studying at the time would be an ideology I'd start to identify with. I'd say probably my interest in liberty and ANCAP is something that developed over the last 5 or 6 years, I'd say.
I think it's pretty similar for pretty much everyone, and I'm glad you concur. So, I mean, the only reason why I'm bringing that up is because you felt steadfast that you would be able to change your mind easily. But in order to let's segue into the question, like you guys brought up the issue of self-ownership, and what I wanted to ask you is, can you defend that position for me, please?
Oh, that's a great question. Defend self-ownership. Well, I think it'll be okay with you if me and Zulu both take a crack at this, because we have
Absolutely.
very different ways of doing this. I'll just say from a practical point of view, when we're dealing with people and I'm having a conversation, 99% of the time that I have the conversation, I'm talking with somebody who's comfortable taking it as a brute fact, meaning just that they're okay with starting from that. And I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with that in terms of, what's palatable to most people. And I'm pretty comfortable with that myself. If you want to do it, different ways of getting there, and you want to instead of just starting from self ownership, which doesn't, by the way, I just want to say, when I say starting from self ownership, I don't say like just skip the interesting point of the conversation. I mean, most people, you can just say, are you okay with sexual assault? Are you okay with rape? Are you okay with slavery? All these kinds of like really, or murder, any of those selection of topics. And after just a few moments of talking with them, you can get back to the fact that they take self-ownership as a brute fact. If that's not satisfying, then you can do argumentation ethics. I don't think Zulu's going to do argumentation ethics. I think he's just familiar with it. But I'll let him get into that. I guess I'm so used to just sort of grounding property rights in a sort of reflexive way, where I'm talking to the other person, figuring out like, how can I show them that they basically already assume that, that's where I come from. So just give me 1 second here. I'll try to do it from scratch, because I think that's what you're asking me.
Well, yeah, I mean, more or less, I'm trying to understand how you're attributing the principles of ownership to the self.
Yeah. So what I would normally say to somebody is, like, let's talk about some things that we can take for granted. And I'm going to have to apologize to Zulu, because I'm going to be like a non-objectivist here really hard. It might be grating to hear. Just take, for example, most people are going to be able to agree with me that they exist. Most people are going to be able to agree with me that other people exist, that the universe exists. And I would say right off the bat that I don't think, if you can't agree on any of those things, then downstream from that, you're not going to be somebody who I can convince that self-ownership is true for. and that's okay with me. So if that's like in the objectivist sense, there's somebody who that doesn't apply to, that's comfortable with me. I don't think that it's true for somebody who, or it's not that it's not true for them, but I just think as a norm, from a normative point of view, it doesn't apply to them. Then if we agree that we exist, the universe exists, I think that an attribute of the universe is scarcity. Scarcity implies a possibility of conflict. Scarcity in combination with the fact that other people exist implies the possibility of conflict. We can go into all of the downsides that come from conflict. And then, for example, somebody might say to me, well, I don't care about any of that. And I am comfortable, and this is definitely a point of divergence from other ways of being an Ancap, but for me, I'm comfortable saying, okay, well, then it doesn't apply to you. If you have absolutely no concern for any of the implications of the world that we live in, then it's satisfying for me to just say, like, I'm just never going to reach that person. Even like if you could say that I could demonstrate for my own purposes that they're wrong, I can't communicate with them if they don't, they're not willing to communicate about those things. They're not willing to have like common ground, let's say. So that's, I'm kind of conflicted here. I don't want to have like I don't want to take too long. I'm trying not to have my interest in brevity cost me in clarity. So that's a pathway from things I think basically everyone should accept. And then if we're going to talk about conflict and avoiding conflict, because like I said, there's all these downsides to conflict. Do we agree that we want to avoid that? How do we do that? And then the first comer principle kind of emerges from that. And we have self-ownership intrinsic in that, because when we're talking about first comer principle, our bodies, which is ourselves, I don't distinguish between ourselves, our bodies, the same thing. There's no way to make sense of a first comer principle unless the body is the thing that we're talking about, doing the like appropriating, homesteading the scarce means from nature. I think I'm gonna like leave it at that, and then if you have a question about that, I think it'd be more productive, and we can hone in from there.
Yeah, I can ask a question now, or I can wait for Liquid Zulu to say something. It's up to you guys.
I would like to go to Liquid Zulu, unless you think it's going to cause you to forget what question you wanted to ask.
No, go ahead.
All right.
Sure. So yeah, basically the validation of self-ownership, you can do it in a number of different ways. It's just a direct implication of that first comer principle that Galazar was talking about there, which is the principle that whoever gets to the thing first, he should be allowed to own it. And this is stated in many different ways by many different jurists, but that's the basic idea. So if you have this first comer ethic, this ethic of non-aggression, that latecomers, another way to state the first comer ethic is just that the latecomer, he's not allowed to do whatever he wants with it. So there are a few ways to validate this. First, let's assume that the latecomer ethic is in fact true, that whoever got to it most recently, they are now imbued with ownership. Okay, that would imply that possession and ownership are the same thing, right? If I just take possession of something from someone, then I own that thing. In the case of bodies, if I took possession of you, then I would own you, right? But this is it's assumed as false by anybody who ever engages in a dispute, even the person who's trying to like propose this as a defense of their actions, right? Because if me and you are in some conflict over, let's say you had a stick and I came along and tried to take that stick from you, and I said, actually, possession and ownership are the same thing, so I'm allowed to take the stick from you. I'm the latecomer and I'm allowed to take the stick from you. Well, I would also have to assume that possession and ownership are not the same thing, because by me asserting ownership, it's me asserting that, well, even if you did manage to take it back from me, I would still own it. It's still rightfully mine, which is why you would be justified in defending that property right. So I would have to assume simultaneously that possession and ownership are the same thing and that they're different things. So that contradiction kind of just undercuts any of those latecomer ethics. And so you can't have any sort of rational legal theory based on a latecomer ethic. And moreover, it's a prerequisite for human flourishing, for you to make choices, for you to produce anything. You have to be able to have control over your body and decide what you're going to do. Now, you might make wrong decisions, you might make wrong productive decisions, and so on and so forth. But you require that freedom in principle, or else you cannot produce. A slave is not productive, right? He's just a tool of somebody who is choosing. For you to be truly productive, you have to make judgments and choose whether you're going to do A or B or C or whatever else. So if you aren't given self-ownership as recognized under some legal theory, then human flourishing is simply impossible. And then so the law would then be incompatible with the requirements to live as a human being. So it would be a completely like intrinsicist view of law, that these are just like rules being beamed down upon you rather than principles that define the proper arena of behavior that you can engage in.
Okay, so when you say that you have control of yourself, do you actually have control of yourself, complete control of yourself? Or do you have things like autonomic nervous systems that you have no say over, that operate? Like, I mean, you can attribute complete control over, say, a lawnmower, and you can adjust its carburetor, you can add parts or remove parts and still have it functioning as a lawnmower. You have complete control over that. But how can you say you have complete control over your body?
Well, so to be clear, I don't think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Galzer, but I don't think either of us were saying that you have complete and total control over every aspect of your body. It's not about control. It's about, in principle, who is allowed to control that thing. If you can, for instance, I could get a pacemaker installed to change how my heart beats. I could do that. In principle, I am allowed to do that. That's where ownership comes in. It's not whether I'm actually able to do that. I might be disabled or something and I can't move my legs. But in principle, I should be the one who's allowed to determine whether my legs are moving or not. Whether I'm able to actually achieve that it isn't relevant. It's like how
I would say it is relevant. I would say that if you can't control the cancer in your body, you can't control your body.
In principle, I should be allowed to go to the moon, for instance. Nobody should be allowed to prevent me from going to the moon. Now, as it turns out,
that's not what I'm
not actually able to go to the moon. But
I'm not talking about going to the moon. I'm talking about controlling your body.
Well, are you, if I understand correctly, are you are you talking about determinism?
I have no idea about determinism. I'm asking about controlling your body. I'm saying that, sure, you're correct. You can control your body, but you don't have complete control of your body. But anything you own, you have complete control over.
No, nobody.
That's my first question. My second question is, can you tell yourself?
I just want to clarify. No libertarian has ever claimed that when you own something, that means you have complete and total control over that thing.
But that's what ownership is.
No, ownership doesn't refer to that I can make something do whatever is physically possible to it.
If you don't have complete control of something, then you don't own it. If you don't own your house, if you don't pay your taxes, you don't have complete control over it.
Do you think that there is no such thing as ownership, or do you think that there is things that you own, for instance?
I think there are things that you own, but that's not the question.
Hold on. What's
the example is, can you control yourself? Can you have complete control? You could have partial control of yourself, but you can't completely control yourself.
What's an example of something you think that you own?
I'm going to give you an example of something that you can't prove you own yourself.
No, that's not what I asked.
You're changing the subject. You're changing the subject, though. Hold on. I don't want to change the subject. I don't want to change the subject.
Dylan, please, I don't want to have to mute anybody, but we got to have a little bit of a orderly back and forth here. So we've already, given you a full treatment on our positions, on our two disparate positions on self-ownership.
Great.
Zulu would like to ask you if you would cooperate for a moment with his question.
But it's not relevant. It's not a relevant question.
Well, we're going to determine that through the process of discourse.
Okay. Here is how is the relevance of me owning something that's not me have anything to do with self-ownership?
Because I'm trying to clarify what your theory of ownership is.
I don't have a theory of ownership. I'm asking you about your theory of ownership.
Well, but you think that there are things that you do own, so you must have some, perhaps even implicit theory of ownership.
Well, that's not the issue here. The issue here is not what I think I own. The issue here, self-ownership and how you think you can own yourself. My second question would be, can you sell yourself?
Do you think contradictions can be true? Such that if you had a contradiction in your view
I
of
don't
ownership...
know. I'm not talking about that. I'm asking you, can you sell yourself?
Who knows? Yeah, who knows if contradictions are true or not?
But if you can't sell yourself, that means the argument you placed today and yes, last week wouldn't be valid. Because if you can sell yourself, it means that you can become a slave. And even you said, look at Zulu, the last 2 weeks, today, this week and last week, that you can't become a slave. You can't sell yourself into slavery.
All right,
so how can you, one of the principles of ownership, which is being able to sell the thing you own, how can you have both sides of this argument then?
Hold on, wrong. Ownership does not mean that you're allowed to sell it. Ownership doesn't
absolutely mean that. Is.
Nope.
You're allowed to sell what you own. If you can't sell what you own, you don't own it.
Not necessarily.
Excuse me?
Not necessarily.
If you can't sell what you own, how do you own it?
Sale. Okay, let me go into what selling means. Selling means a transfer of property from A to B, which means that there's a simultaneous abandonment and homesteading of that thing.
The human property.
Hold on. That is the first principles derivation of how you get to transfer.
So a human's property then.
So the question is, are certain properties alienable or not? There's a certain category of property which is not alienable. Could I abandon my own body? No. So how could I ever sell it? And
okay,
furthermore,
there are things that you can, the principles of ownership.
Hold on, Dylan, so I just want to make a clarification here, and this is possibly a fruitful clarification for the viewers too. We don't want to have a sort of debate format, and we don't want to have, this should be a discussion, and it's certainly a topic I think that has a great deal of potential to be discussed. So let's just try to have a little bit of a back and forth here, Dylan, because you've asked Zulu, for example, the most recent thing we're talking about here is how can you have something that you own and can't sell? Now, you've asked that question, and I think it's only fair that Zulu can get his answer out before you rebut.
Sure. So selling and ownership, they're really entirely disconnected things. Now, for the most part, it's true that there are things, if you're able to own something, then you are in fact able to sell it. This is not necessarily the case. Selling is not imbibed into the definition of ownership. And for instance, there are things that you can sell, but you can't own. You could sell a Bitcoin, but you can't own a Bitcoin. It doesn't make any sense to say that you own a Bitcoin, but you can sell it all you want. This is kind of where the economic and the legal, there is an overlap there in the concepts, but it's not a perfect circle, that Venn diagram. There are certain concepts which are pure, which it goes into the economic realm, and you have to recognize the separation there. And it doesn't, nowhere in libertarian theory can you get that it's in fact, if I own something, that implies that I can sell it. That's an unstated assumption you got there, which you need to prove. Okay, I'll repeat. So you need to prove that premise, that if I own something, therefore I can sell it.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear what you're saying.
Can you hear what I'm saying, Dylan?
Very low volume.
Okay. We're both able to hear each other, and we're able to hear you. So is there a possibility that you're having a technical issue on your side?
My volume's up all the way.
I think it might be a connection issue since Zulu, are you hearing the same thing I'm hearing, that he's sort of cutting in and out?
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility there.
I'll continue this conversation over Discord. How's that sound?
Well, you're back now. I hear you crystal clear if you want to continue. Can you hear us?
Okay, well, I can barely hear you, but I can continue. But what I was going to say in response to that is I'm not talking about Bitcoin. I'm not talking about any other item. I'll even take back my analogy of a lawnmower. I'm going to ask you once again, how can you possibly sell or even give away yourself and consider yourself an owner when you yourself said this week and last week that you can't do that with your own body? You can't sell or give away your own body. If that's true, which I'll agree with you, then how can you possibly own it? If you can't give away or sell what you own, you're stuck with it for the rest of your life. Then how is that a principle of ownership? Now, I think the confusion here is that you think that there's no other possible recourse. And my answer to that is there absolutely is. If you actually think about it, you can be a caretaker of yourself, but you can't own yourself. And you can't own other humans for the exact same reason.
So again,
you can be a caretaker to humans.
You're
you
the
cannot own humans.
You're the one who's making
buy or sell humans. You can't buy or sell yourself. You have no complete control over yourself. That's provable, which means you can be a caretaker of yourself. You can try your best to take care of yourself, which would be what a pacemaker is, the example you brought up. But you can't control yourself.
So again, you're the one who's making the positive claim that if I own something, that implies that I can sell it. This is a claim that you have not proven.
That's a principle of ownership, yes.
No, prove that. Prove that given I own something.
A principle of ownership, yes, you can sell yourself and you have complete control of yourself. Are two principles of ownership that I dare anyone to dispute.
Okay, well, let's just hold on. Let's just get this so concrete, right? So you asked us to do this. Zulu and I both presented the ways that we start from very first principles. I started from, I went all the way back to I know I exist, right? That's how foundational I went, and I worked all the way up to my theory of property rights. Now, I didn't have the time to go into every minute detail of it, but that's the impression I wanted to give everybody for how we get there. And Zulu did the same thing. Now, in return, I think that it's a fair thing for the sake of discourse. You're saying you've asserted something about your property rights theory. You're saying in my property rights theory, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, you're saying everything you own, you are able to sell. There's no exceptions to this, right? So
that's not what I said.
All right, please correct me.
What are the principles of ownership? Let's go by your principles of ownership. Please describe to me every element that makes things you can own.
Not a chance. So, like I said, at your request, we've given you from our foundational grounding all the way up to our theory of property. Right. All right. So now we're asking you
ownership, not who you are. Ownership.
No, that wasn't
explain to me
provided
how you cannot.
All right. Unfortunately, for the first time ever, I've had to mute somebody, and I regret that. But so what we're asking politely is you've got a theory of ownership, and you've expressed it. I think clearly, you're saying in your theory of ownership or property rights, you object to me calling it property rights, so we'll just say ownership. You're saying in your theory of ownership, if you can't sell something, you don't own it, or something like that. I'm going to give you the floor to correct my particular semantics here. All we're asking is, just like we did when you asked, please show us how you derive that theory of ownership, rather than simply asserting that if you own something, you can't sell it. And you're unmuted.
It's not a theory. These are the principles of ownership. Please explain to me how I'm wrong when it comes to ownership. And you can add on to these. What are the elements of ownership?
There's been a terrible miscommunication, and I'll take full responsibility for the miscommunication. You're saying X, and I'm not even saying what it is anymore because I don't want to risk the possibility of misstating your position. But you're saying X is a principle of ownership. So all we are saying as part of the natural flow of conversation here is please explain to us how you derive that principle of ownership.
Because that's what the foundational elements of ownership are. One, you have hold on. We have complete control.
I got to mute you again. I did not ask you to tell me what the principle is or list the principles. All we would like to hear from you is if you could tell us where you're deriving them from. If you say again that's just what they are, then I have to assume that what you're asserting is that they're just a brute fact. Zulu, is that a reasonable inference?
Yeah. Which then it's just like, okay, well, I disagree. I disagree that ownership implies that I can sell the thing. And then where the hell do we go from there? If he's not going to validate it. But I will ask to the guest, please keep your mic volume down because it's incredibly loud in that last section where you said that. I don't know if you were just holding it closer or what, but it was incredibly loud.
I'll see if I can monitor the gain of my case as well and just put a cap on it as well. All right, so Dylan, I'm unmuting you, please. We just want to hear we understand that you're saying there are principles of ownership. We understand that you're saying they are principles. That's what they are. We're just asking you how you derive that, because that's what we did for you. That's what you asked us to do. And you're unmuted.
It makes logical sense. That's all. All I have to contribute to this.
Perfect. So
What are
can
the
you show us?
principles of ownership?
So when we
Hold on, let me
answered
finish.
your
Let me
question,
finish.
no, I can't because you're not answering the question. When you
I
asked
am
us how
answering the
do
question. Let me finish, and I will.
all right, I got to meet you again. So when we say our theory of property rights or ownership makes logical sense, we showed every single inference starting from I exist, the universe exists, scarcity exists, and we worked all the way. So when we say it makes logical sense, that's what we mean by that statement. We're showing here's all the logical steps that get you there. You're saying it makes logical sense, and I accept that whatever your worldview on this matter is makes logical sense. Now, please share with us that logic.
Okay, so one more time, okay, and let me finish. The principles of ownership, the elements of ownership, are these things. Now, I can include some, and some things you might dispute, and there's things that can be precluded. But the elements of ownership are complete control of the thing you own, the ability to sell what you own, the ability to create what you own, I guess. But to say that you can't sell what you own denies the whole concept of trade. Please answer that.
Okay, so well, we can go back to answering that question because we actually did earlier, but I want to say again.
But you didn't though. You came up with an answer, but it doesn't make sense.
Okay, well, we can explore that too, but let's just take this in logical steps now. So you asked us. I'm trying to recall this as faithfully verbatim as possible. You said, and no, actually, here I'll just ask you. Please repeat in your words this principle about how if you can't sell it, you don't own it, or it's a principle of ownership that you can sell it. What's the exact principle in your words?
If you can't sell something you own, you don't own it. It's forced on you.
Okay, so that's a principle of ownership. We can agree that your position is okay. So what we're asking you for is in the same way that we did this for you, please explain to us how you've come to that conclusion.
Because if I can't, this is how I can come to that conclusion. If I can't sell something I own, it means it's forced upon me. It means I have no rights, or whatever you want to call it, to sell it.
So
have to be, one of the principles of ownership is the ability to sell what you own. It's your choice. It's your freedom of choice. But you can't sell yourself. Even Liquid Zulu says that. He says that the last 2 weeks in a row. So that's a contradiction.
That's restating your thesis, but it's
whatever.
Okay, so this is a completely inapplicable sense of the word force. Nobody who is forcing that you own yourself on you. What is that? What does force even refer to there?
Okay, you can't own yourself because you owning yourself doesn't follow the principles of ownership.
But under our theory,
you can be a caretaker of yourself, but you cannot be an owner of yourself because it doesn't follow the fundamental elements of ownership.
So let's say there's a conflict over the use of your body between me and you. Who should win that conflict?
Well, there's morality.
Who should win?
And you can accept, you can be immoral about this or not. If you're immoral about it, you're a slave owner. If you're moral about it, you allow people to flourish and become their own caretakers.
And so, who should win that conflict? If I'm punching you, for instance,
well, should. There's no such thing as should. What's moral and what's immoral?
What was the word you said there? There's no such thing as what? What was the right word?
There's no thing as should. That's just your rule. That's your preference.
What does that mean, though?
It means that, we should do what I think is.
Oh, so there is such a thing as should. Got it. So who should win that?
Whoa, okay, that's different. It's not a matter of should. Should is a preference.
On your theory, what would your theory say about that?
Not a theory. It's a proof.
What does your proof say about that conflict? What is your proof on the matter of which party is proper to win this conflict? What is your
sorry, say that again.
Say about that? So you've got some proof of ownership, and this proof of ownership is going to say something about this conflict between me and you, where I'm punching you in the face. Okay, and what does this proof of ownership say with respect to that?
Okay, the proof of
Who has
ownership is
priority
that
over that
you
body?
can't own a human being, and I
Nope,
can't own a
nope,
human being.
That's not the
I
question.
can't own myself.
Not the
You
question I
can't
asked.
own
I didn't
myself.
ask you if you can own a human
Because
being.
hold
I
on,
didn't ask
it
that.
doesn't follow the principles or the elements of ownership.
Okay,
It's an
Dylan,
so
impossibility to own
Dylan,
yourself.
Dylan, what's in contention here, right? So we're having a discussion from two different points of view. And the thing that's in contention is this principle you're asserting, which is that, and I hope that I've reproduced it faithfully here on my whiteboard, that if you cannot sell something, you don't own it, right? Now that is what's in contention here. So we're not
You don't own yourself, so you can't sell yourself.
right. So
Not
what
what
we're
you
asking
said,
for is
what I
now
said.
we've identified the point of contention. And so what Zulu and I have done to open the conversation is we derived our theory of ownership and property rights from first principles or first observations or whatever.
I know,
Uh,
but that doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. What's
Well,
relevant
okay.
is this. What's relevant is this. Can you sell yourself? No, you cannot sell yourself.
But
Can
you're
you give yourself
demonstrating
away?
that by
No,
saying that
you can't
you're,
give
you're,
yourself away.
you're,
Do you
you're
have complete
attempting to
control of your
justify
body?
that.
No, you don't have complete control of your
All right, I'm sorry, I got to mute you because it's not a good use of airtime to just repeat your position over and over again. I apologize. What's in contention here is that you're saying that this principle justifies what's in contention. But what's in contention is the principle. Do you understand? So what we're seeking to do, what we're seeking to get out of this is, okay, we've all identified what the domain of the conversation is. It's this principle, as it's shown on my whiteboard here, that if you can't sell something, you don't own it. That's what's in contention. So now, instead of telling us what the principle is, since we've already identified that, demonstrate that the principle is valid. And if you demonstrate that the principle is valid by simply asserting that it's valid or going in a circle, then you might understand why we don't find that compelling.
You can't have self-ownership because you can't have yourself follow the principles or elements of ownership. Now, you can declare any elements you want of ownership. Please go ahead and tell me what you think they are. But I also do know this. One of the fundamental elements of ownership is being the right to being able to sell it or give away what you own. Another fundamental element of ownership is that you have complete control of what you have.
Please demonstrate the truth of that assertion.
The proof of that assertion is easy. If you have complete control over something, it means you own it. If you don't have complete control over something, it means you don't own it.
Dylan, I don't want to be disrespectful to you.
If you can sell something,
I have to
or give something away.
I have to mute you again. I'm sorry. I don't want to be disrespectful, but I have to assume at this point that you are not unable to differentiate between like the two sentences, and the principle is what's under discussion here, right? So when you repeat the principle back to us when we ask you for justification, you're not making any progress towards anything. And I believe you're capable of making progress towards what we're discussing here, which is why I keep giving you the opportunity. So when I say, please demonstrate the truth of the principle, and you say, it's obvious, if you don't own something, if you don't sell something, you don't own it. That is the principle that's under contention. That's what we're discussing, right? So repeating it is not an argument to justify it. I'm trying to say this in as few words as possible. So I'm gonna have to limit you to one more attempt at this, and if you make a good, if you do it, we can keep going. But you have the principle, we agreed on what it is. If you cannot sell something, you do not own it. Please explain to us how you've reached that conclusion.
They ask, can you sell what you own?
That's what we're asking.
Can you sell what you own?
Sometimes.
What do you mean sometimes?
It means in some cases you're able to sell what you own.
But in other cases, nobody wants to buy it. Then I, in fact, cannot sell the thing.
Well, that's not a matter of can. That's a matter of somebody trying to buy it.
Well, hold on.
That's not an answer.
Nobody wants to buy this water bottle from me. How can I sell it?
But you can sell it if you wanted to.
How can I sell it? I want to sell it. Nobody wants to buy it.
You can sell it if you want to.
Well,
you're not denied the ability to sell it. You can put a for sale sign on it. If someone doesn't buy, that does not preclude the principle of ownership.
But how can I sell it if nobody wants to buy it?
But you can still sell it.
How?
Just because no one wants to buy it doesn't mean you can't sell it.
Who am I going to sell it to?
That's not relevant. That's absolutely irrelevant. It's a non sequitur.
There are 0 people who I can sell it to. So doesn't that follow?
That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
There
Can
are
you sell what you own?
zero
Yes
people in
or no?
existence. There are 0 people in existence who I am able to sell this thing to. That's what it means when it says that they can't buy it.
Can you sell
So there are
what you
0 people in
own?
existence
Yes or
that I can
no?
sell
It's a
this to.
simple question.
So how can I sell it?
Can
Explain that to
you?
me.
Not will you?
Not necessarily.
Can you?
Not necessarily.
So what maybe the distinction that's useful to bring in here, right, is what Zulu's talking about is the physical capability of completing the transaction. And
I
you
didn't
mean
say that.
hold
I
on,
said-
I literally said that's what Zulu said. So I know you didn't say that because I said that's
Yeah,
what Zulu said.
that's misdirection. That's a straw man.
All right. You know what, Dylan? I think this has been a really productive conversation.
No, it hasn't.
But you don't think so? I
No.
actually do think that it has been. So I'll
You
tell you
can't
what.
answer this question with any relevant or material or actual uh, factual response. Can you sell yourself? Can you sell what you own?
So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm
Can
going to
you
give
sell
you.
yourself?
I have to mute you just so I can tell you I'm going to do this. I'm going to give you the floor for about 30 seconds and give you the opportunity to sum up your argument, so uninterrupted from us, and then we're going to have to move on to the next caller. So I'm going to unmute you. Feel free to summarize everything you think that we're getting wrong, and we're going to move on to the next caller. So you're unmuted, and you've got the floor.
If anyone thinks that they can sell themselves, it means that they think that they can sell what they own. But you can't sell yourself. And to say that a principle of ownership is that you can't sell what you own is absolutely illogical. It doesn't follow the principles of ownership to be able to have self-ownership, because one of the principles of ownership is the ability to sell yourself. Another is having complete control of your body. And you don't. 2 failures on the principles or fundamental elements of ownership. You can't self-own.
All right. Are you satisfied that that's the summary of your point?
Well, I didn't want to make statements. I wanted to ask Ancap what they thought. But you guys are forcing me into a position which I don't really think I have to make. But here we are.
All right. Well,
You have
thanks
to
so much for
defend your
calling in.
position, not me.
Yeah, so I
make
think
my
another
own.
principle of ownership is I should be allowed to have sex with your mother, whether she likes to or not. That's another principle of ownership. If you ask me how it's a principle of ownership, it just kind of is. You know, that's another.
So
it's a
that
fundamental
means that you
principle.
can't own someone.
right.
Then you just
No, it's
concur to me
between me
that
and
you
your
can't
mother.
own another person to rape them.
I specifically, I'm allowed to rape her.
Who says you're allowed to rape her?
It's a fundamental principle of ownership, man. What are you talking about?
No, fundamental principle of ownership is that you can rape something if you want it, if you own it.
If
Since you
don't
can't
do it,
own
then
another
you
human
don't own
being,
it.
it's not a principle of ownership. Thanks for agreeing with me.
There's a fundamental principle of ownership that I'm allowed to rape your mother. I don't know.
No, it's a fundamental ownership that you can rape what you own. Since you can't rape your mother, you don't own
But
her.
but he owns your mother.
He doesn't own your mother because it doesn't follow the principles of ownership.
If he doesn't
got
own
it?
your mother, that violates the principle, the fundamental principle that he can do that.
Yeah, you said, which means you can't own your mother. You can't rape your mother because you don't own her. If you do rape your mother, you're being immoral.
Well, yeah, because I don't own her. I own your mother.
Or my mother. It doesn't matter. Whose mother? You can't own a person, just like you can't own yourself. It doesn't follow the principles of ownership. If you think that you own my mother so you can rape her, prove it. Prove that you can own my mother. Because
my proof is that
principles of ownership do not follow from what you just said.
My proof is that it's a fundamental principle of ownership. I don't know what you're not
But
getting.
it's not a fundamental principle of ownership because you haven't described the fundamental principles of ownership. I have.
No, that is the fundamental principle of ownership, is that I'm allowed to rape
The fundamental principles of ownership is one of them is that you can sell yourself or you can give away yourself, but you can't. Even you concurred that 2 weeks in a row. So it doesn't follow the principles of ownership, which means you can't own yourself.
I don't know what you're confused by. I just told you what the fundamental principle of ownership is, and it's that I get.
Yeah, the fundamental principles. One of the fundamental principles is that you can sell something that you own, but you can't sell yourself, which is what you said 2 weeks in a row. Which means it doesn't follow the principles of ownership to be self-ownership. You cannot own yourself. There's
exactly one fundamental principle of ownership, and it's that I'm allowed to rape your mother. I don't know what you're confused
That's
about.
according to you. That's according to you. But here's the fundamental. This isn't according to me. You have to be able to sell what you own, or you don't own it.
Okay,
Since
so
you can't sell yourself, you don't own
method
yourself.
we could perhaps use if I'm making one claim and you're making a different claim?
It's not a claim. It's a fact.
Is there some
It's
method?
a fact that you have the ability to sell yourself or sell you what you own. That is a fact. If you can't sell what you own, you don't own it.
It's a fact that I'm allowed to rape your mother. That's a fact.
It's a fact. It's your opinion that you can rape my mother, but you can't prove that you own my mother.
So there has to be like some proof behind it.
Prove that you own my mother. Which principles of ownership do you have so you can own my mother? Describe them to me.
If you own something, therefore you can sell it. Can you prove that?
You just said that you can't sell human beings, so that's not ownership, right?
Can you prove that? Yes or no?
Is that correct? You even said it 2 weeks in a row. You can't sell human beings because you have no rights to own them. That's not a principle of ownership, correct?
It is a principle of ownership.
No, then you're contradicting yourself. You're contradicting what you said this week and last week.
I'm asserting what ownership is. I'm asserting that you can't own other people. I'm asserting.
What are your principles of ownership? What are the principles of ownership?
So
what are the undeniable truths of ownership? Go ahead.
To rape Dylan's mother. That's the first principle of ownership. Most important.
That's according to you. Now here's the fundamental element of ownership. You can do whatever you want with what you own. You can sell what you own. You can give away what you own. You have free use of what you own.
All right, gentlemen, sorry. I got to cut in here just because I want to keep things productive. I did give Dylan the floor to make his exiting statements, but the fire is reignited, and who am I to put an end to it? But I have to say, let's just try to keep this a little bit more concrete. Dylan, I want to start at this particular logical point, and Zulu, you can jump back in right after I get us back on track here. Dylan, you've asserted competing principles of ownership, and the only difference between your principles of ownership and Zulu's principles of ownership, and let's just, for the sake of argument, say that Zulu and I don't even have the same principles of ownership. We've got 3 competing ones. What sets yours apart from ours is that we have derived ours. And what does that mean? It means we started from first principles and observations, and we went through the logical inferences one by one to where our position that we're promoting and advocating for seems, to us at least, to be necessary. You have taken the first step, which is you've told us what your principle is. You have done nothing to justify it, except, and I will give you credit for this, you have attempted to justify it by telling us what it is. And every time somebody says, justify that, you say, if something violates this principle, it doesn't count as ownership. Well, that is just another way of telling us what the principle is. So
hold on now.
Sure, I'm holding on.
So you're trying to tell me that you came derived from first principles that it's okay to rape my mother? Is that your derivation?
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. Zulu was not serious about that, and the reason that he brought that up was actually.
Okay. So you're.
Sorry, I gotta mute you again. I'm so sorry. You're interrupting me. The reason Zulu said that, and maybe he chose different words than I would, but I think he was making a completely valid point, was that he was using the same process you were using to justify those questionable principles. And he was trying charitably to help you see why using that kind of faulty logic can bring you to justify not so good beliefs. So his not so good principles were justified using the same process. And that process specifically, I don't want anyone to think I'm being a cop-out here, that process specifically was, he states the principle, and then when you reject the principle, he says, no, I'm proving the principle by asserting that going against the principle affirms the principle. Very strange. So that's what he was doing. It was a little bit of, metaphor, allegory, something like that. But that's not our actual position, just so everybody understands. Our property rights theory is not oriented around sexual assault. So now I want to give you the floor back. Please share with everybody your derivation to your principles, which you were very kind to share with us. Now, please share how you get to those conclusions. And I'm just telling you in advance, we will not accept the answer that it's a principle of ownership because if you violate the principle, you don't own something. That is not an answer. I apologize.
The derivations of ownership are
Mhm.
fundamental and everywhere, and everyone can see them. And if you violate those fundamental elements of ownership, you don't have ownership. You can list them and you can challenge every one of them. And that's my challenge to you. You're trying to tell me in some ridiculous notion that you can't sell what you own. That's what you said to me. You can't sell what you own. Please prove that.
I want to just take this opportunity also to clarify for the audience as well that we're actually neither Zulu nor myself have said that. Zulu
Yeah, you
has
did.
said, "Oh, okay, well, all right, it's the floor there, Dylan. You tell us what our position is, and then we'll see if you can reproduce it faithfully."
Okay. Can you sell what you
No,
own?
that is not. Please, what you said okay to was I said, please reproduce our position, and you asked me a question. We'll just chalk that up to being a category error. Please try to tell us what our position is on property. You're not muted or anything. All right. Well, I will admit our property right theory can be intimidating, so that maybe explains it. Dylan,
Tell you what, I like
hate.
him a lot better now when he's
So look, I want to give Dylan the last word. He's not muted or anything. So here's what it is. Dylan did have the last word before. So if I upload this call, I'm going to take that last word. I'm actually going to duplicate it, put it at the end again. So he gets the last word twice. Dylan, if you can hear this, please feel free to call back in again about this topic or any other topic. We'd be happy to pick up the chat with you another time. But for the time being, we're going to move on to our next call because we seem to have lost track of you. Righty. So you are going to go there. So I'm going to just say our next caller is, let me check before I pull them up. I've got it right here. It's, they want to talk about pets. Oh, this is going to be great. All right. We're bringing you up. Alexa, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear
All
you.
right. Perfect. I had gotten a brief summary of your question, but it's been so long now. Why don't you just go ahead and fill us in on what you wanted to talk about?
Okay, so the idea is what responsibility you bear as a pet owner, and your pet does some aggression. The idea is, for instance, you have a pit bull and it bites someone's leg and they break their leg. Should you pay restitution and retribution, or neither, or just one?
I'm sorry, I was leaving the floor to Zulu for that one.
Oh, right, sorry. So yeah, I think it's basically the same principles as with other property. So if I'm being like really negligent and I am like, let's say I've got like a really I've got a leaning tower of Pisa. I want to build my own leaning tower of Pisa, but I build it really shittily, and it falls over and like demolishes your house, right? Now it's very plausible that I'm being negligent there, in which case I would have to pay restitution, and if I'm being malicious, even retribution, right? You'd be like to, I don't know, lean tower of Pisa of your own onto my house. So I think it's the same thing with something like a pit bull, and it would be also the same if I wanted to, have like a pet bear, right? If I had a pet bear, and like I'm not being very specific, like, hey, that's the bear room. Don't go in the bear room, or the bear is going to kill you. And if you went in the bear room, it's like, well done, genius. Now you're dead. But if I was like, oh, here is my bear. His name's Snuffles, and I let him run around the park a little bit. He has fun, and then it eats a person. I mean, yeah, that's my fault then, because I'm supposed to be directing this property. I've clearly directed it in a manner which, at least negligently, has killed someone.
Okay. Then my question is, what if you abandon, let's say, the bear? You just put it outside, you unleash it, and you say, no longer my property, I abandon it. Are you no longer as responsible for anything it does?
So it's not the fact that you specifically own the thing. It's that you're the one who directed it into that state. So, for instance, I might like plant a mine right on your front door step, right? And I say, I'm abandoning this mine. Job's done. I'm walking away. And then you step out onto the mine and blow up. was it's not the fact that I own the mine that would be problematic there. It's the fact that I have directed a mine to explode you, and it would be the same thing with like a bear or like a smallpox virus. If I was like, I don't want this smallpox virus anymore, I toss it out my window and it explodes and kills a bunch of people. That would be the same sort of deal.
Okay. That sums it up pretty nicely. Okay.
You had another question, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I have quite a few. But we can take this one about Denmark first. So let's say you're the prime minister of Denmark. That's where I come from, and you have this possibility you can pull out of NATO. It's like this big state, multiple state organization of mutual defense. But specifically for Denmark, there's also this thing where Russia really likes Denmark and the location it has. So there is a very, very big risk that if you leave this agreement, that Denmark would just be overtaken by the Russians in no time. Would it be valid under the libertarian theory to postpone leaving the agreement, or should you do it the instant you can?
So you definitely shouldn't postpone it. Like if it's on the table, like it's like, oh, we could get out of NATO now. You shouldn't push it back and try and maintain this like statist organization. But I'm not saying that that's the first thing you should try. And we got to get rid of NATO, and that's the very first thing we got to do. I mean, it is fundamentally like a defensive alliance. It's not the world's worst atrocity done by militaries, of course. There are much bigger things to focus on in that realm. But yeah, no, if it's on the table, then yeah, press that button. I'm not sure how likely it is that Denmark gets invaded, though. Russia seems to be having enough of a problem with Ukraine, and that used to be part of the same nation. So,
yeah, true. What if Russia like explicitly said we're gonna invade Denmark if you leave the agreement?
So it would be the same thing. Honestly, like the best way to deal with that type of threat would be to keep deregulating, keep allowing the free market to flourish, and then if it became like an anarchist region with like super powerful defense agencies, well, that's going to be a hell of a fucking thing to invade. Like, good luck, Russia. And very quickly, Putin's going to get like orbital laser strike, and then just he's a pile of ash on the pavement there. Not a good idea.
Okay, that answers it quite well. I have some other.
Sorry, let me just jump in there real quick. Just say I've found that this was a useful answer to give to a really similar question in the past. I know it's just slightly a step away from the Russia invasion threat, but something I've said to others is, if I could snap my fingers, and I think a lot of other Ancaps feel the same way. I'll let Zulu finish my thought here, but if I could snap my fingers, I would abolish everything at once, and that would include specifically like the welfare state and having immigration controls. But I would I don't have that ability. I have to put conscious effort into affecting policy change slowly over time is a much more likely possibility. And under those circumstances, I would choose to abolish the welfare state first, and then the immigration controls second, within the context of having to do those things in a certain order, knowing, like, for example, it's probably going to be months or years after one gets done that the other one gets done. But that doesn't mean that if I had the chance to snap my fingers and make policy changes happen immediately, that I would snap my fingers and only do welfare, and then snap my fingers and only do borders months later. I would still do them as soon as I was able, but the constraints on us add that tiny little bit of nuance. What do you think, Zulu? Does that add anything?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, ultimately, we are constrained by scarcity. Like, nobody's actually giving us this magical button which turns everybody into an Ancap or whatever. Like, nobody's doing that. You are constrained by scarcity, and you should go after the most severe violations of the non-aggression principle first, and then you can start working your way down to other things as the opportunity is fit. Now, sometimes it's not obvious. It also doesn't work exactly like that. It's not like you have the opportunity to take apart the biggest thing first, and then the second biggest thing, and then the third. Like, it's not like that. You might have an opportunity in the moment, because of some other political goings on, to get rid of like some aspect of the state, and then you should grab that opportunity when you can. But that doesn't mean that you should our top priority as the Libertarian Party is to go after the National Parks Commission. It's all things considered, the national parks, it's not the largest problem we're facing at the moment. Much larger problems in the US, for instance, like the Federal Reserve, that's a big one. The military-industrial complex, that's another big one. The welfare, the Social Security. If they could get rid of Social Security in the US, oh boy, they'd be way wealthier, like very quickly. IP, that's another one.
All right. I have quite a few questions. You just stop me if it takes too much time and
Well,
such.
Zulu, what do you think? It's up to you. It's your ballpark.
How about this? Because I think we do have other callers like waiting. How about you just like go into like I don't know, back into the queue, I suppose, and then see if you could continue the questions. I am wary of somebody like getting cut off because I'll admit I did enjoy that first caller. I liked playing with my meal, as it were. So I don't want to like cut anybody too short.
Sure. So what we'll do then, Alexa, is don't even leave the StreamYard setup. We'll take Zatidik up, and then when we're finished with Zatidik, if there's no one else in the queue, we'll just pull you right back.
Okay, nice.
All right. Thanks so much. I'm going to drop you off, and I'm going to pull up Zatidik, and I'm going to say, Zatidik, you're on the air. We can hear you if you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you.
And your question was about Bitcoin, so I'll let you take the floor.
Yeah, I heard that you could sell Bitcoin, but you can't own it. But how can you transfer something that you don't own?
So this is sort of like the using the same term in different ways. So there's catalactic ownership, referring to economics, of course, versus legal ownership. Now, sell can actually be used in both ways. So it's possible, for instance, to sell your labor. That's a very useful concept to have. I'm selling my labor to some employer because it clarifies a lot of things about economics. It's not like, certain economists, the Marxians, will assume that the employer is like some like tyrant who's ruling over his employees. Sorry, but no, it's not actually like that. It's the employees are themselves entrepreneurs who are selling their labor to the capitalist there. So sell is a very important concept for economists, and that's in fact where we get it from. Now, in the legal sense, certainly, you wouldn't sell a Bitcoin because I don't think you can even own a Bitcoin in the first place. So it wouldn't actually be like a transfer of title to property. That'd be like a fool way of saying that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I never thought about labor that way. Yeah, like if you could sell your labor and you thought about it in legal terms, I mean, you could like sell yourself, basically. That would mean if it was legal. That answered that.
It wouldn't even be selling yourself. It would be because labor is something you do with your property, right? So it would almost be like selling the fact that my ball can roll to somebody. It's like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, like it reminds me of like the concepts in ecological psychology where they talk about like a system and you have like you and the tree cutting system basically. So labor would be you and whatever you're working with and you're selling that system or something. So yeah. I don't have more questions right now. I just thought of that question. So yeah. I had a different question, but it's not Ancap question. Is that fine?
Well, what kind of question is it?
I posted it in Submit Questions. Let's see. What philosophy does Galazar, you, have? Why not objectivism? I'm willing to join the panel. Okay, yeah. That was the question.
Well, I'll tell you what, on the topic of objectivism, I don't mind saying this. I'm not an objectivist, but I don't want to get into it here because, and if anyone thinks it's because I am self-aware that I'd lose, Zulu is the co-host. I would definitely lose. But the fact is, I want to convey, let me be a little bit romantic here and just say Ancap unity. So there's not going to be much for me to generate for that mission specifically if we get into strife within Ancap. But I'd be happy to answer, my shortcomings and maybe get converted on the other side in the Discord. I do have a question that's related to what you said, though, Zatidik. So before we bump you off, I think I'll just answer that because you might have thoughts on it. But somebody in the YouTube comments was saying, what does it mean to say that nobody can steal Bitcoin? Zulu, I think you'll be able to give him the technical explanation for that best.
Sure. So I will correct you. He said, does that mean that no one can steal Bitcoin?
Oh, sure.
So yeah, indeed. This is unfortunate as somebody who I've got some Bitcoin myself. I don't have any legal protection over that Bitcoin, apart from the fact that I own the hardware wallet that it's stored in. What good is that if they transfer it away to like some other wallet on the chain, right? So yeah, no, it's definitely the case that you don't actually. There's no such thing as stealing a Bitcoin, but presumably there would be other crimes involved in actually going about doing that. Now, this is actually very, very very weird tangent here. This is actually related to the commodity theory of money. Now, I'll try and wrap this back around as well as I can. It just popped into my head. So Mises, he tells us that, well, for there to be any money, it has to be based on some commodity. I can't remember his exact argument for that. I remember agreeing with it when I read it. But then that gives us a big question there. It's, well, hang on, because isn't Bitcoin a very good candidate for becoming money? If you've read like Saifedean, he's saying that he's also an Austrian, and he's saying that Bitcoin is a very good candidate for being money. So, but if it's not a commodity, you can't actually like own the thing. Like, what's going on there? So I think if you carefully consider Mises' argument, he's talking about it in the context of an unhampered market. He's not saying anything about if the government comes in and completely destroys everything. Well, then his theory kind of goes out the window at that point. And I think it's entirely possible that something like Bitcoin would never have come about if we were on a truly free market. There would be no need for something like that. That you only get this kind of like aberration where it's money which isn't owned, because the state has come in and ruined everything. There are benefits to it, of course. For instance, it's harder money than any natural metal could ever be. It's impossible money. That's how hard it is. Once you reach 20 million Bitcoin, there will be zero more Bitcoin ever mined. That is not the case for any other natural substance you could use. So like it is an interesting quandary we're in, where the best thing for money is something which is kind of like, on its face, it feels very like almost bad. This money feels very like I don't know the exact right word for it, irreverent. It's not taking into account like how money, it feels like you should be able to own money, right? But as it turns out, not so.
I have a follow-up question on that last part. So you're saying like it's a reaction to the state, but then wouldn't actually Monero be the best one as a reaction, because it's like also anonymous and fungible?
Also, so the market doesn't actually necessarily care about how many goodies the money brings along with it. What more so matters is whether it's actually being used as as an intermediary of exchange, right? As some medium of exchange. That's all that really matters for money. And like, let's be honest here, Bitcoin is way broader adoption than Monero probably ever will have. I'm not like a Bitcoin maximalist. I do have it in the other room, but I haven't read Saifedean's book on the Bitcoin standard yet. So I'm not ride or die for Bitcoin. If Monero becomes currency, then I'm all for it. But at the moment, it looks like that's the one that the governments are going to want to go after most of all.
Yeah. And they are going after it. I think like they had this like blockstream thing I heard about, like trying to prevent Bitcoin from having like technology that Monero currently has. Yeah, so like, but like this, the inherent technology in these systems, you don't think that matters at all?
Not particularly, because I mean, you know, a physicist or like a geologist or what have you, they might be able to tell you about all the benefits that platinum has over gold. As an example, I don't know if this is actually the case, but they might be able to rattle off just how better platinum is for everything that we use gold for in terms of money. Now, that doesn't mean squat if the world is already using money, using gold as money. You can see how I'm a gold bug fundamentally, I guess, because I keep mixing up the words gold and money. But like, if it doesn't matter if platinum is indeed better at doing the things that we use money for than gold would be, if already everybody's using gold as money, you're going to use them. You're going to use money, right? You're not going to use non-money and try and like push it onto people. It doesn't work.
I think if there is like a fundamental flaw, or at least something that's very bad with a certain kind of money, like with shells, even if everyone is using it, like some exploit in it will make people move to a different kind of money.
Sure. So like
also like positive. I think also positive reasons could do that hypothetically. Sorry.
So like for instance with shells, they have been used as money before, I believe. It's nothing on the scale of like the gold standard, for instance. And there's very good reason for that. You're right. It's not a particularly good money. You can't. It's not arbitrarily divisible. It's not fungible, right? Every shell is kind of different, so it doesn't work great as a form of money. And so you get like a sort of natural selection process which goes on, and then eventually something will rise as money, right? Money means the universal medium of exchange. Something will arise as money, which is good enough to be money, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be perfect. Like there are problems with gold, but it's good enough. It's widespread enough that like that became money, and there's really no reason to go away from it. Now, if it did have these major problems, then yeah, people would stop using it on the commodity theory of money, and we would slowly move over to some superior type of money. You know,
I mean, I think in the very long term there will be like this slight, if there is some technology that is better than another technology or money, I think there just will be this slight push. Like I would imagine. I'm not sure. Like I have like a super good justification right now, but be a slight push because of like the objective inherent property of this money to become the main money, basically. Like if it's the same but better, I think so at least. Yeah, I'm guessing I don't have a justification right now for that.
Cool. Well, I think that probably brings us full circle on that topic. I have another caller who's calling in about something that's a hot button issue right now. So, Zatinik, if you want to just hop back into the back room, and we'll put you back in this rotation if you have any other questions.
Cool.
All right. Thanks so much for popping in. And so we got one more caller here, and this caller has a question about nation states, particularly like Israel, and how their participation in genocide might affect your opinion about them. So I'm going to put them up on the stage and let them ask their question. All right. Camille, you are on the line.
Hello, Mr. Zulu, the prior of all Ancaps. My question is more in regards to basically, what if, let's just take Nation of Israel, basically chooses on its own to, because it wants to have security from Iran, so on and so forth, start doing like bullshit games, geopolitical games, and eventually through them basically helps a genocide of another nation like Armenia that they helped in recently in the 2020 to 2024 war, and basically supported the enemies of Armenia, and basically indirectly and sort of directly helped to genocide.
Yes,
So
I mean,
what would you like what would you say about these sort of things, geopolitical games, like nations doing this sort of games and so on and so forth towards other nations, and like doesn't that make it at the very least like nation of Israel like hypocrites of doing that to Armenians?
well, yeah, certainly. I think it's very bad to be going around and genociding people or like bombing them or what have you. That's definitely not a good thing. I certainly don't want there to be a state of Israel, just like I don't want there to be any other sort of state. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I would definitely condemn that. The very first thing Israel should do is, peel back from all of this expansionism and going to war in the region. You know, if the IDF truly was the Israeli Defense Force,
Mhm.
then it would be it might be a lot less horrific. But of
Yeah.
course, that doesn't actually that never lasts when you've got those sorts of conditions.
Yeah, because the thing is, this geopolitical conflict they kind of involved themselves in is like more of a war between Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and they just involved themselves because they need to use Azerbaijan as a hedge towards Iran. And they basically, on top of that, did some other nasty stuff like sending our government a letter asking to not use word genocide for the war situation that ethnically cleansed the whole region. And it's basically a whole mess. And like for me, it is a little bit hard to like think of ways ANCAPs, libertarians in such nations that are basically bullied by a lot of other powerful nations are going to rise and basically also recover the property and land that was taken from them via ethnic cleansings.
Let me just contribute if I may. I hope I'm not interrupting, but since we're already of the opinion that the state is bad, we
Mhm.
don't we should just clarify we definitely don't need the state to commit genocide to get there. We're already of the opinion. So um, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to oversimplify anything, but we're coming from the starting place almost that the state is bad. So
Yeah,
um,
well,
even if let me maybe say this, this might be a useful thing to say. If the state does something on the other side of
Mhm.
of that, like charity, for example, I'm sure that Zulu, I'm quite confident Zulu would agree with me that that's bad also. So it's not merely the
Mhm.
case that the state did bad in committing genocide. In order for the state to perform charity, and even then, I have to put it in scare quotes. Even then, we're going to argue that they're doing something bad, and we're going to get to some other callers here, so I'm going to have to give you the spark notes on that. But they have to divert resources away from their most highly valued ends to do those things, and they have to break moral ethical, legal laws in order to be able to give charity. Because before they can give charity, they have to take that property from someone
Mhm.
else in the first place. So obviously, genocide is something that most people are not going to disagree with as being a terrible evil. But with regards to the state, we don't need to wait for the state to do something bad like that or to get involved in geopolitical games where people get hurt because we were
Mhm.
already trying to abolish the state completely because they
Mhm.
were handing out charity. So we're there.
Yeah, but like my kind of like second fault question is like, how do we, in cases like Armenia, where it's basically fucked from all directions, can fix the situation for individuals and caps in that nation to be able for them to resist this sort of states and oppression?
Um, I'm sorry. Could you say that one more time?
I was asking, in these sort of situations that I described, how is it possible for people and ANCAPs from Armenia to then like unfuck their situation that they are in, basically being genocided, their land being taken, and so on and so forth. How can technically Armenians unfuck their own situation?
Well, I just want to say that there's two aspects of that. There's the aspect of what things can they do rightfully and unrightfully, and there's a whole that's theory based. So Zulu and I would be able to look at a hypothetical action committed by an Armenian and say he should have done that, or he was justified in doing that, or he shouldn't have done that. But then, and the separate side of that is okay. Well, we already let's just assuming that they're being genocided and all this sort of things. What specific strategy is going to be most effective for those particular people facing that particular threat? I have to. I'm going to hand it over to Zulu because maybe he's got a deeper insight on this. But I have to sort of plead ignorance on this because I just don't know enough about the people in the situation that they're in to say anything specific about the how. Only that we could reliably, if we were in that position, we could use Ancap theory to differentiate between justified and unjustified actions. But what those are going to be in this particular case, I shouldn't comment.
Yeah, no, yeah, basically that. Certainly, individual Armenians, if they're wanting to fight against that invasive force, he's trying to destroy their property or what have you. Yeah, that's perfectly legitimate. Yeah, like it's really we shouldn't collectivize it too heavily. It should be this individual Armenian, was he justified in doing that? This individual Israeli, was he legitimate in doing that? So on and so forth. It's that type of deal, I would say.
Okay, thank you for at least clarifying some and giving some thought here to chew. Thank you very much.
I will say thank you very much for coming on, but I will say if Evolutionary Capitalist is still in chat, we were looking forward to your question. The screener has informed us that you decided to call on next week for time constraints. I don't know about Galzar, but I'm perfectly willing to go late just for Evolutionary Capitalist.
Okay, then I will go. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your comment, and please, by all means, if you are watching the stream and you feel like you got like another question or anything like that, post it in. And if you don't get to it in the stream, we're definitely going to be able to answer you on text. So thanks so much for your question. I hope that you feel it was answered satisfactorily. We haven't got Evolutionary Capitalist in the queue, but we do have Warp Sonic, who's got a really good question for us about vigilantism. So I'm going to pull him up. And Warp, you are on the line. How would you like to talk about vigilantism?
Hi. So my question was kind of vigilantism as it relates to standard of evidence, I guess. So I guess I'll give like a hypothetical. This is the hypothetical I came up with when I was thinking about how to ask this was, let's say it's the 90s and I am the only close relative of O.J. Simpson's wife. And O.J., with how that trial went, it was found that the evidence is was insufficient to convict him. But people generally think, yeah, he probably did it. And so then my question is, like, in that case, if I go out on my own and I kill O.J. Simpson and then I get taken to court and I say, well, he was probably a murderer, then the, standard of evidence would seem like, well, if he was a murderer, then I didn't do anything wrong and he was probably a murderer. So does that mean that does that mean that the evidence of whether or not I am guilty is dependent on whether or not it can be proven that O.J. Simpson wasn't a murderer? Or is it because there wasn't enough evidence for that I don't get to, get away with just killing him in revenge or whatever?
So I would say that the standards of evidence aren't actually any different for vigilantes than for anybody else. Now, yeah, I think I can say that he's dead now, right? Yeah, he absolutely did it. He is a murderer. This is just a factual claim. Every piece of evidence points to the fact that O.J. Simpson is a murderer. So yeah, on that, you'd be allowed to punish him for that crime. I'll say it in that way. And he was even found on the balanced probabilities, I believe the standard is for the civil courts, to have done it. So he got sued. And the court did indeed find that it's almost certainly the case that he did do it. But the jury explicitly the jury said that they just wanted a win after Trayvon Martin, I believe it was. So they just voted him not guilty because he was black. Like, explicitly, they were interviewed after the fact, and they were like, yeah, that was the sentiment in that jury, that the black people needed a win after Trayvon Martin. So like, yeah, he's absolutely guilty, and that's all that really matters. It doesn't matter whether the state recognizes that he's guilty or not.
Right. So at that case, I guess the question is still like, I think you mentioned this, that you think that like the standard of evidence for vigilantism would be the same as for like a formalized court, where so like if you did something and the and people rule that your evidence of this, that of this person doing something punishable wasn't good enough, then it's essentially you'd be personally guilty.
Yeah, if you punish somebody unduly, then yeah, you would be guilty of that.
I don't want to speak out of turn here. I had to pay attention for a moment to make sure that we got our next caller into the chat, and I'm glad to say that he is here. But I want to offer this in the event that it's useful, and I just want to say that forensics as a area of study, which is the whole topic of how to properly establish that some incident happened a certain way, is separate entirely from the theory that we have about property rights. So there's a firm line, and on one side there's the question of like, in reality, person A either did or did not do a property rights violation, and whatever, like you're talking about vigilantism, Zulu was talking about, he can be punished, then that's an entirely factual, just that's out there. And then forensics is like the separate process we have to go through within our limited, human beings are subject to uncertainty, imperfect knowledge, all these kinds of things. And in the context of those limitations, we have to come up with a way to determine, did that happen? And that's a separate entire process. And I'd even say it's a separate topic in a sense. It is objectively either the case that it happened a certain way. And then, so one way you could look at it is ask a hypothetical such that we assert all of the different characteristics of the situation, and then we can evaluate that with theory and say, okay, that did or did not constitute a property rights violation. Separate from that entirely is, let's say that the people who asked that question, they're in a separate universe and they're observers, and there's no way for them to communicate. And now inside the universe, there's normal people like us. Now we have to use this forensic science to try and figure out, okay, are we justified acting as if this happened one way or the other way? And we have to make that decision ultimately, never having perfect knowledge. I mean, I used to say a while ago, when I was younger, I'd use an example of like, well, we can get really close because, maybe you've got like videotapes of someone committing a crime, and that's pretty strong evidence. And even that with AI now isn't as strong evidence as it used to be. So I hope that is a useful insight to sort of like the different approaches we have to take to answer a question like that.
Yeah, I guess, and I'm like, I am an Ancap, so like I take y'all's side, but I guess the question to me is like, with decentralized courts, if they adopt some kind of like, if there's any kind of variance in standard of evidence, could they basically condemn each other for rulings that, if they have different standards of evidence, how would they deal with any sort of deviation in that fields between different I guess these decentralized judicial agencies?
So, dealing with differences between different judicial agencies, that's certainly an interesting problem. But I will say, in the first case, it doesn't actually matter for the legal theory, right? The legal theory can be correct, and different people can try to be applying it in different ways and be wrong, right? So certainly, but it is important for us, right? If we want to actually have this theory realized and be existential in a way, then we definitely want people to be under some agreement there. Now, I think that you would tend to not get really absurd rulings too often, because if you have like some sort of an absurd ruling, well, if we're assuming that this is an anarcho-capitalist world, well, then people already must be convinced of our objective legal theory, right? So who is going for and patronizing these courts with absurd rulings, right? And that's why I'm so heavy on how it's all about the philosophy of the day. If we convince a critical mass of the population of our legal theory, then that just is going to be realized, right? That's the fundamental thing there. It's not about how do we carefully orchestrate it and make sure that the market is exactly matching up to that. That's all downstream. We don't have to really worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I am more so less defeatist about it, like, oh, this is like a fatal blow to the theory, as much as I'm like, I want to learn more and theorize more on how can we like, this is a solvable problem, right? So I'm like, how should this work, and also how could that, like, come about naturally?
Yeah.
So
Well, I feel like that's a holistic treatment of the question that was originally posed. Anyhow, I like this topic a lot, actually, and I think we could afford to get into it, but we're a little bit over time, so we better get to our last caller. Please call in again next week, or ask a question in text if nothing else, and let us continue chatting with you next time about this topic.
okay, yeah, I'll think about it if I have any more questions. Thanks.
Sweet. Perfect. Thanks so much. All right. So that was our fifth call on vigilantism. And I'm going to pull up our next caller. And I got to listen really close because I'm not even sure what 100% the question is. So, evolutionary capitalist, you are on the line with us.
That's often the case with this guy.
Am I too loud?
Whoa. Okay.
No.
What's the question?
Zulu. Hey. I find it so my question is about insurance. Like, I keep hearing the market solution to private property protection is insurance. And I find it hilarious. Like, the primary market solution that Ancap's proposed, right, is given that it's highly dependent on government, right, because of its inherent instability. Like, number one, it's highly unstable due to adverse selection, which requires government mandate, or else you have the people whose policies are mispriced leave the scheme. Number two, it's not a magical scheme that makes property defense affordable, right? If the aggressive threat is too expensive for the owner to pay to defend against in the first place, it doesn't magically make it affordable. It actually makes it more expensive, especially when it's administered by a profit-seeking business. But most importantly, three, insurance is a societal bad, right? Through moral hazard, it amplifies the economic losses of the events you're insuring against.
Okay, so to clarify, is your claim that like on a free market, insurance is actually like non-profitable? That if I have fire insurance, I'm going to be worse off than if I don't have fire insurance, assuming I have a house fire.
I said society's worse off when there's insurance schemes.
Okay, but am I worse off?
And number one, I just want to correct you. The market isn't a free market. A pure market isn't a free one.
Okay,
Pure market doesn't care about.
We're going to put aside your specific vocabulary for a moment, because I know you're going to have all kinds of opinions on that type of thing. But I just want to know, like, would I personally be better off if I paid into insurance and I got a house fire than if I didn't pay into insurance and I got a house fire?
No, you're better off just self-insuring, and society is also.
What does self-insurance mean?
It's when you don't transfer the risk that creates the moral hazard the moral hazard that causes
like specifically, what does it look like for me to self-insure? Do you mean saving?
Yeah, saving in the event of
okay, well,
risk.
I don't know how into real estate you are, but as it turns out, for most people, if they own a house, their house is like by far their most valuable asset. So they're not going to be able to save enough to buy a second house if their first one gets blown up or goes down in a fire, which is why they get house insurance, because that distributes the risk across a big population. You see, that's the purpose of insurance.
Yeah, you don't see how unstable that is. I mean,
no.
This is just classic game theory analysis. You know what adverse selection is?
Not particularly.
Well, let me just jump in here 1 second, because I want to just say this for the audience. So like the position where me and Zulu are coming from here is that if you have like a neighborhood with 10 houses in it, and Zulu's saying like your house is a great example of something it's too expensive for you to so you were saying self-insurance was just essentially savings. You're saving up to account for the possible tornadoes, fires, floods, etc. And so what our position is, and I'm not trying to assert it as a brute fact. I think that our interlocutor here is going to get lots of opportunities to disagree with us. But the position is that if you take how much savings would be required, not only for your house, but all of your assets and all of the different risks that are presented to that asset, because it's not just fire, it's not just flood, there's many different risks. It's cheaper if the 10 houses in the neighborhood combine their resources. And because now you could argue, well, the absolute amount of damage that has to be compensated in monetary terms is actually the same. So you're kind of just gambling. But we would make one important disagreement about that, which is this. Because of the volume of your own capital that's freed up, so you no longer have to take capital and put it to one side and essentially leave it in a state of non-use. You have to keep it saved up, where the purpose it's serving is just being ready for replacing the burnt down house or whatever. That capital can be invested. Now, you can think of it in really simple monetary terms, like investing it in a stock where you get a dividend, but it can also be something a little bit more physical. So you can invest it in better farm equipment or, anything like that. And so you become, because of the burden that is alleviated through this coordination of risk in this neighborhood, everybody is not only able to participate in a gambling scheme, but rather they're able to propel themselves much further than would otherwise have been possible in time by having the ability to put that capital to more productive uses and bring further away ends in time nearer. I'm going to back off and let Zulu take the reins again, but I just thought it would be to everyone's benefit to be clear about what our position is there.
Yeah, but you're not okay. So I'm just going to step in. I mean, you're assuming number one, the pool is solvent, right? Big enough catastrophe will wipe out the pool. Number two, this is insurance at best in its optimal form is a zero-sum game, and when it's at its best, it just turns into everyone self-insuring, right? You're not considering the solvency of whoever's administrating the insurance scheme, whether it be just a community pool with no one skimming off the top, or a business entity that's actually doing it for profit, right? It's a zero-sum game. Any liquidity benefit you can point to will cause is someone else's risk of you're depending on their liquidity to cancel that out. So, but the problem here is, again, right? Once you any mispricing of risk in the insurance policy will cause people to either stay or leave the policy, right? So every time you have every time you risk pool, it becomes a big tragedy of the commons. It becomes this perverted game of people being incentivized to have damage due to the event you're insuring against. So anytime you have an insurance scheme, society suffers because you're going to have more damage due to the event. Just to name one, just insurance fraud alone will cause a net societal damage, a net societal loss, and that's the problem, right? It's at best it's a zero-sum game, and that's only when the policyholder has absolutely no control over the event you're insuring against, and that's usually not the case. So my point is, you never want to transfer risk. You never want to give the person with the best access to the property the incentive to destroy it.
I apologize for the silence there. I just want to make sure that I'm recording your thoughts accurately. Also, I just want to say, everybody, Zulu had a small technical problem, and he's handling it. He is going to be back shortly.
He ran.
He did. I can't look. What can I deny? No, he's going to be back shortly, and so there's a possibility.
With Ask ChatGPT.
Listen here, I'm the only one here with a subscription to ChatGPT. He's going to be back soon. So the reason I'm saying that is you might have to repeat yourself, and I apologize for that. Can you tell me a little bit about the critique you got here that we're assuming the pool is solvent? So what does that mean exactly, and what refutation role does that play?
You could do just a thought experiment, right? If me and you were to, like, let's say a community was just me and you, and we were to pull our risks together, right off the bat, so insurance companies only make money when the premiums they take in are more than the claims they pay out, right? So let's assume there's not even that entity skimming off the top. It's just you and me. So right off the bat, we're going to start paying premiums. If an event occurs that hits, let's say if we're insuring against tornado damage on our houses, a tornado wipes out both our houses, and we just started paying premiums into the pool, it's going to get wiped out. It's not going to pay either of us. The pool's not big enough to pay to make either of us whole, right? That's the risk. It's always a zero-sum game. Like, your gains from any insurance claim or liquidity are at the cost of somebody else. It's not.
Yep.
Oh, there he is.
Keep going. You're here. We're all good. I just had to swap your spot with Zulu.
That's basically it. And also if one of us, we're gonna calculate claims based upon each of our risks, right? And our potential damage, like the value of our house versus the risk it gets damaged from the event we're insuring against. If any of us misprice our risks, for instance, I systematically gain more from claims from the policy, right? You're gonna have the incentive to leave the policy. And eventually the insurance scheme collapses. It just collapses from attrition, from the less risky people leaving the insurance policy. It's not a market solution to any property offense. And the market won't protect Lockean property. It won't protect property based upon first come, first serve and voluntary transfer. The market only cares about one thing: profit and production. So enforcers in a market will only defend the highest bidder or the person with the highest competitive advantage.
How do you get production in the first place?
Property. Efficient allocation of property.
So if all the market cares about is property, production, then surely it's going to try and protect property, because you can't have production without property first.
Yes, efficient allocation of property, right? And a first come first serve isn't efficient allocation of property. You want to allocate property to the highest, basically the highest bidder, or the person with the highest comparative advantage, right? So it doesn't matter.
That already happens with first come first serve. The highest bidder tends to get the
Yeah.
property already.
Yeah, but you have the right not to transfer to them if you don't want to sell. Now, in a pure market,
How can you be a highest bidder in a world where you're suggesting where it's not going to the first person, where it's going to just some random latecomer? What does it mean to be the highest bidder?
Random.
It means that you robbed the most people. And so why is that a better allocation of resources to give all the resources to the best robbers? Why is that a better allocation?
Well, it's not quite the highest bidder, but let's just simplify it to that. So the highest bidders, that's their subjective expectation of productivity if they're rational. So each person's bid represents your expected productivity with the property, and that's why it allocates property most efficiently. So
okay, but you haven't actually answered the question. You're asserting that the better world would be where instead of first come first served, it's some latecomer is allowed to get the property. So he's a thief. Not
necessarily,
right? And that's the way that you gain wealth in your perfect society. So the highest bidder, the person who has the potential to be the highest bidder, that is going to be the person who's best at being a thief. So why is it it's definitely not obvious to me how it's better allocation of resources, how it's better society, that the thieves get everything.
You're just injecting emotion by calling him a thief.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you agree with this? Resources should go to the person who's the most productive with the resource, right?
You're just injecting emotion by calling it productive.
So so you can agree with this. Here's how we want to allocate resources to maximize productivity. The distribution of property should be such that each one has a comparative advantage in the resource. Now, what Lockean rights do is cause stagnancy, right? It gives the right to the current owner to not allow that to happen, right? If someone's able to produce a lot more with the property, it gives them the right to say no to any of their offers. In my system, you'd have to defend it yourself, right? And the maximum you're willing to pay to defend your property is basically your bid.
Okay, so you're straight up talking about law of the jungle, right? It's just going to war with everybody you see and trying to wrestle, and that's what you mean by bidding.
Why do you keep insisting on calling it like derisive terms? This is just
that's what it is.
This is just evolution in the profit motive.
Well, no. But existentially, like literally, what you're talking about is
like I don't care what
it's people going to war with each other and battling over goods, and you think that the bear system is the strongest guy. He's the highest bidder in your system.
There's incentive.
Whoever can steal the most property, that's going to be a better allocation of resources. That's just not obvious to me at all.
No, it's like you're not used to game theory, right, Zulu? There's no incentive to go to war, right? If each party,
that's what you were describing. You were saying that bidding was how much you're willing to spend to defend your property. Defend against whom? Some attacker. And if he's a higher bidder than you, that means he overcomes your defense.
So
that's war.
If both parties have perfect information, like they see each other's bid, and perfect information.
Yeah, you can see how many guns I've got. I can see how many guns you've got.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you mean by bids. Again, let's stop using this romantic language here. You're not talking about bidding. You're talking about war.
Let's say I'm trying to bid against the property you currently own, right? I'm willing to pay more than you.
You're willing to bring a bunch of guns to bear.
You see, my max bid is 10 times your bid, right?
You've got 10 times more guys with guns.
What are you gonna? As a profit maximizing individual, what do you do at that point?
It depends.
Are you going to go to war with me?
Well, in your world, I'd probably be living in a castle because I'd be worried about people trying to invade me all the time. So I'd be in a castle and I'd be well defended. If you've got twice as many guys, I think I can defend you off.
The point of an economy is not to own property; it's to maximize productivity, right?
And by maximize productivity, you think productivity is maximized by this state of constant warfare?
I'm telling you why you're avoiding engaging why I said it's more productive, right?
Why is
Like
that?
first off, you're only putting yourself. You're not doing a complete cost benefit analysis. You're only putting yourself in the victim's shoes, right? You're number one. You're not.
I'm just describing it in real terms. Here.
You're not considering the instances where you're the aggressor, and more importantly, in most cases, you're going to be a third party beneficiary, right? Someone not participating in a bidding for property benefits from the increased productivity.
Yeah, these two guys go to war, and then I can invade them after when they're both weaker. Let's talk about it in real terms. Like you're talking about war here. That's all I'm trying to do here.
This is where ANCAPs get things wrong. War can be profitable. That's the problem.
And by profitable, you mean that they are able to steal as much property as possible. I agree.
No,
war can allow you to steal a lot of property.
No. You're in my system in this high bidder. It's really a highest comparative
high bidder, you mean the guy with the most guns?
No, it's really the
most people.
If you really want to be technical, it's the highest comparative advantage system, right?
So and by that, you mean the person who's able to overwhelm as many people as possible.
No, it's the person. It's the person It's the person whose ownership maximizes productivity. So that's.
And by that, you mean that he's able to steal many things.
I mean, if you can.
That's what you said. That's what you said, though. You said the bid. You said that the bid that I am putting on my property is how much I'm willing to spend to defend my property.
Yes.
What does defense mean? It means defending against some invader. So that's your worldview.
No, it's not my worldview. It's gonna be the economy, and most importantly, from the perspective of a company that's enforcing property ownership, right? They don't care. Who do you think they're gonna side with? I mean, unless you just assume they just agree with all your ethics, right?
Well, if everybody agreed with you, right? If everybody agreed with you, there would be no society. So don't you worry about that question. That question is not going to come up for you. There's not going to be the question of how do we organize society, because there won't be society anymore, right? It'll be constant warfare. It'll be Hobbes' reduction ad absurdum.
Now, here's the difference in a comparative advantage bidding system, right? Now you take into account opportunity costs. Right, when everybody can see everybody's opportunity costs and has perfect information about their bids, now there's room to negotiate. Now even the lower bidder can win the property if his opportunity costs are low enough. Right,
the weaker defender can sometimes win. That's what you mean.
That gives each bidder in a property conflict the necessary information to come up with a negotiation scheme. Right? If I can see your opportunity cost, I can pay you off, even though you're the highest bidder. Right?
Is it like a bar above their head, like in The Sims or something?
Yeah, that's why a perfect economy doesn't have any privacy. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's just like Death Note, right? You can see everything. You should see everything about your opponents, and this is what eliminates actual war.
How do you get this system of perfect information under a regime of total war between everybody?
It's in naturally
achieve that
technology.
No. How do you get that
only
technology?
Government protects privacy, right?
How do you get that technology?
So when you remove government, you remove
privacy. No. How do you get that technology? That's just my only question. How do you get that technology?
Oh my God! When you had the technical issue, he said you ran. He's gone. He's gone, everybody. Right. I assume he's going to come back. I'll keep the line of communication open in case he heads back over. Zulu, sorry for not jumping in more often there. I didn't want to interrupt the flow. I'm trying to decide in my head now if it's inappropriate for me to say anything in the absence of our interlocutor. I don't know. So I missed something here, Zulu. Maybe you can elucidate this for me, and if you're mistaken, he might be able to correct you when he gets back here. Can you tell me, I heard him say something about war, but then when you pressed him on it, you said that he's advocating for a war system. He denied it. He said, no, there's no way. I'm actually saying that this system prevents wars. Can you tell me, can you clarify for me a little bit, where's he advocating for warfare here? I didn't quite catch that. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think I missed it.
Yeah. So when he clarified at one point what he meant by this bidding. He's not talking in literal monetary terms, right? He said the bid that I'm putting on my own house is the amount that I'm willing to spend to defend my house. Okay, well, that implies that the higher bidder on my house is just whoever's willing to spend the most to take my house from me. And if I bid higher than them, that means I've got better defenses than they've got offenses. Because he even said that you can bid less on your house and still keep it, right? But that would never happen at an auction, right? If I bid $100, you bid $200, I'm not going to get the fucking thing, right? So he's not talking monetary terms. He's talking in terms of, well, if I might have less means of attack than you might have a bigger army than me, but I might still be able to defend my fortress, right? Because I'm in a better position or what have you. That's what he's talking about. Like with EvoCap, if people don't realize in the chat or whatever, he doesn't speak like a human normally does. You gotta read between the lines very heavily with this guy. Like he likes to weave around what he's talking about.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's something really suspicious about the use of. I heard him say game theory, and there's something really suspicious to me. And I wish he was here because I don't want to speak about him in his
He's
absence.
in the chat.
He's in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay. Well, look. Then he declared himself the victor. So I'm going to say that I agree that he's the victor, and because we've come to a consensus on that, I'm now allowed to say whatever I want with impunity. So, when you're talking about game theory, like from a psychological, so I have an academic background in psychology, so I know that there's a lot of overlap between game theory and psychology and how we're setting up experimentation and sort of answering our scientific questions. And I can like bid on property, and what that really sounds like to me, Zulu, is they'll put a bunch of people in a room around a round table and they'll say, okay, we're doing game theory. So for this game, you got to pretend that you own this house. And you have, you can spend money on defense or you can spend money on offense. And we'll assume that in this case that $1 cancels out $1. So, and I don't want anyone to think that this is how this is the specific configuration. I just want to give everyone an impression of what game theory looks like. And so they'll say, okay, your $1 can cancel at $1 of defense. Maybe they'll assume that the houses are worth a certain amount in the first place. And then like all these examples of, okay, so what's the most rational decision that you could make under these circumstances? And when we're going to write about this, we're going to publish this article, we're going to refer to the amount of resources that they allocated to their defense rather than their offense as the bid they're putting on their property. And like that's sort of like, because he's talking about game theory and he's using his language this way, that's really what it sounds like to me. Okay, well, he just said that I'm doing the analysis correctly. So Evolutionary Capitalist has agreed that I'm understanding game theory, so I'm validated. So what we would need to discuss at greater length here is, I think this is obvious, but are the results that come from this game theory, is that going to translate to the real world? Now, obviously, Zulu and I are going to have to come to an agreement that it's not going to translate to the real world. The only real remaining question is, why doesn't it? Well, I'm going to make an attempt at this. When you're talking about in the real world, obviously people do engage in insurance. And he asked me a question during that, when Zulu was away, he asked me a question that was about a situation where there's just two of us. So let's imagine that there's two of us on a desert island and we have some sort of risk that we're trying to account for. So we can complicate this by saying, well, it's our hut, or it's our our fishing stick or whatever. But let's just say that there's some sort of risk and we're both in agreement that it's going to cost about the monetary equivalent of 100 seashells is what we think this risk is, and it's going to affect one out of the two of us. So Zulu and I have a savings of 100 seashells each already. So I can choose between either I can put my 100 seashells aside, and And that now if that risk occurs, I can account for the risk with my savings. And this was a term that evolutionary capitalists described as self-insuring, or as Zulu correctly pointed out, is just saving. Okay, that's one option. But then there's another option is Zulu and I can say, well, why don't the two of us put 50 seashells aside each? And by putting 50 seashells aside each, now when the risk hits us, whichever one it hits is going to be covered. And there's a little bit of a gamble there. And I think that the gambling element of this sorts of, I think that maybe has more importance than it deserves. And I'll explain why now. Because, and this is, I'm just meaning in economic terms here, because we have regained access to those 50 seashells, which otherwise would have been allocated to just sitting unused, we can do things with them. Now, I'm going to have to move away from the seashells right now because obviously there isn't a stock market on a desert island. But with that 50 units of currency, we could invest it. Now, on the desert island, this is still valid because I could invest it in trading with Zulu or something else. But I'm just trying to keep things simple here. We can invest that 50 into something like, let's say, a 10% return on the stock market. 10% is usually a pretty high return, but I'm just using that to keep it simple. If you do that, then in 1 year with that 50 extra seashells, Zulu and I are both going to get 10 extra seashells each. So we're richer because we've done this. And we have to appreciate a sort of exponential increase to this rate of growth of our capital, because if Zulu and I come to the agreement, not only that there is a risk, but we say we think it's going to occur once in the next 10 years, once in the next 20 years, then we don't need to put aside all 100 of the monetary units of the risk at once. We can say, let's just put aside 10 each now. And then every time, let's say we make 2 seashells a day, we'll put 1 seashell into our insurance and we'll put the other seashell into our savings. If we did that, then we'd be able to exponentially increase our return on investment. So it seems to me, from an economic analysis point of view, that it is absolutely, unquestionably, in our best interests to participate in this cooperative process. And I will try to do service, if I can, to one of the concerns that he had, which was you don't want to give the person with the best access to the property the incentive to destroy it. And I feel that Zulu would have the same answer here. After I give this explanation, Zulu, I invite you to take over from me. But when Zulu and I come into this agreement, we're saying the ownership of these seashells held in mutual possession, let's say, goes to whoever suffers the consequences of that risk when it occurs, whether it's a storm or a fire. And it's implicit, like it can either be implicit or explicit, but like it's obviously the case that it doesn't include intentionally setting fire to your own property. And if you don't believe that it's implicit, then for the sakes of for the purposes of our conversation, you could easily just assert that in our contract we had the foresight to include that as an explicit detail. Although, of course, in any real insurance company, it's already explicit there as well. So this isn't hypothetical. If you come into an agreement with somebody that the mutually shared seashells become yours if your house burnt down by natural means, and then you light it down yourself, which is obviously not natural, and then you take control of the seashells, well, they're not yours because the conditions of the contract never triggered. Thus, they were not, ownership of the seashells never came to you, and you're committing fraud. And it's no different than if I just went to Zulu's hut and took 50 seashells from him, in a sense. This is covered under property rights and non-aggression. So I think that objection fails for that reason. Anyway, I've talked long enough. That's my response. And evolutionary capitalist, thank you for validating. Oh, you know what? I actually can do this. 1 second. I have to do this. I have to put the comment on the screen so that all posterity knows. I was telling the truth. He did say I was correct on game theory. All right. That's my defense. And Sulu, please, the floor is yours.
Sure. So I want to take this basically in a very game theoretic direction and try and justify why insurance makes sense. I mean, first of all, so game theory, it's a mathematical construct. You can think of it as it's analyzing a very particular sort of case. It isn't metaphysics. Okay, let's just get that on the table. But even so, I do want to direct everybody's attention to this. It's a little diagram I drew here. Evolutionary capitalists is going to like this very much. This is if you're insured and you get hit versus not hit in the example Galsar was giving, versus if you just save and you're hit versus not hit. So this kind of highlights why you remove the element of risk when you have insurance. You know that you're going to have 50 no matter what. And you can imagine that if it's instead 100 people on the island, and you only have to give one seashell, well, it's going to be 99, 99 versus 0 or 100. Keep broadening that out. I'm only going to spend like $10 to insure like my hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of assets. You can see how insurance makes a lot of sense. Because in this situation, like which situation really looks more like gambling to you, to use that as a pejorative? I would say the situation where you're taking on all the risk yourself. That looks a whole lot more like gambling to me than the situation where you are distributing this risk. And no matter what happens with this like tornado or flood or what have you, you can be assured that you're going to have a certain level of capital no matter what. And then you can plan based on the level of capital you expect to have. And you can keep reinvesting that. Whereas in this case, if some disaster comes along, you're wiped out. You're out of the fucking market at that point. So I think that kind of highlights why insurance works, even from our, limited game theoretic analysis, where it's just literally a single example and we're just trying to analyze it. That's, I think, a good enough validation of insurance.
I thought that was an excellent demonstration, and in particular, the way that you compared how one circumstance really strongly resembles gambling, and the other really, well, not so much. I thought that was really accessible. So we've got everything pretty much covered here in terms of our calls. Our screener is asleep. So I think that this is close to time to call it. And we're a little bit over double time. Evolutionary Capitalist, I think that you're more than welcome to call back in again. Evolutionary Capitalist actually is laying out a game theory experiment for us to play out between Zulu and I, as one of us being the insurer and one of us being the insuree. So maybe we'll get we'll put a little costume on next game. We'll go through the game theory. But for now, I think we're going to have to call it here.
You do already look like an insurer because you've got the suit on and I'm just in my pajamas. So
yeah, so I'm happy to take that role. I'll come with a clipboard and I'll be the adjuster. What do they call actuarial science, right? I always wanted to be an actuarial scientist, but Austrian economics caused me to forget how numbers work. So it was not meant to be.
I think they make a lot of money. There were a bunch of actuary people trying to be actuaries in my mathematics course. They would, pop in every other lecture or so.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm in some political activist groups, and all of the top dogs are all actuarial scientists, and I totally concur with that finding. So I guess what we had better do is we'll leave it there, because that was a great call. We started off strong, we ended strong. It couldn't be better. And if anyone knows about psychology, the start and the end are the most memorable parts of any event. So awesome. I guess we'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody. If you know somebody who wants to call in, or you want to call in yourself, make sure that you do. The pinned comment will take you to the Discord server where you can go through the process of getting on the call. It's really easy. And yeah, I guess that's it. Zulu, last word?
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody who came along. Thank you. I was going to say thank you especially to the donators. That's what I normally say. But this channel is unfortunately not monetized yet, so we don't have any donators. But please keep sharing the stream around. I've been watching every so often. The view count, it looks like we're on up to 50 viewers this time. Very good trajectory. Let's keep getting this channel shared, and share it with all your socialist friends. Get people to call in. That's always fun to have. And thank you everybody for coming along. Thank you very much, Galazar, for hosting.
My pleasure. Make sure you check out the description to get everybody who called in. Well, sorry, nobody who called in as a YouTube channel. Check our YouTube channels out, and we'll see you guys next time.